Hi everyone, John Riggins here, and thank you so much for joining me on this wonderful, bright, and cheery day as we talk about something dark and scary. Ooh. And if you guys saw my last video, I watched. No, I didn't watch. I talked about the Haunted Mansion novels, and I talked about them overarchingly and why they were good and some of the things that were bad about them. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the first volume of the Haunted Mansion series, and it's a 4-part series, and it's done by Disney Press, and this one's called Volume 1, The Fearsome Four. It is a really nice hardback copy right here. It's the kind of the navy blue and the dark and silver, and let me tell you something. It is a really good book. Now, I feel like this is the weakest of the four, so if you're turned off by the series, and I hate saying this, I really do. It's one of my worst critiques whenever somebody says, "Oh, just keep reading or just keep watching. It gets better." I'm like, it should always start out strong. But that being said, this right here, this is a juvenile book. So if you're about my age, which I'm 37, and I'm reading a kid's book, you're probably not going to enjoy it as much as, say, a 13-year-old, which is why I suggest somewhere around the age of 13, maybe a little under, maybe a little over, then maybe they would enjoy this book more than you would. However, if you're a fan of Disney and the Haunted Mansion like I am, you're still going to enjoy the book because there are a lot of really awesome references. There are really a lot of awesome images that the author creates. And of course, there's some really great artistry, too, by Kelly Jones. Now, I love this because the book starts off with, "Welcome to our library," because it's told by Amicus Arcane, who is the ghost host of the Haunted Mansion rides, and he is revealed to be an actual librarian of the Haunted Mansion. He is the keeper of the 999 tales, but there's always room for 1,000, and you could be it. Now, it says here, "Stop reading. You heard me. Put this book down this instant. Put it back where you found it. For your own sake, I beseech you. You're not the type." And I love it. Because it keeps talking about what is the type, our type. We talk about, I'm a ghost, you're not, you're a living, you know, this book's going to kill you. And it's kind of neato because he talks about his tale. You don't really get a lot of backstory of who he is or how he came to be where he is. But you do get a lot of detail behind some of the other characters, too. Now, in the first book, it's called The Fearsome Four. And it talks about these 4 kids, Willa, Tim, Steve, and Noah. And these kids call themselves the Fearsome Four because, like an episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark, they gather around, they tell ghost stories, they tell the scariest story, and whoever wins, like, they get ice cream. Which is very childish, but they are young kids. And they're around the age of 13, which is another reason why I say probably around the age of 13 are probably going to enjoy this more often because they're going to be able to identify with the characters more. And I love the way he describes the kids. The one that has the most character, though, is the character of Willa. She's my favorite because he's like, her hair changes like the season. It's blue one day to fit her personality, or maybe it's brown, or maybe it's her original color, dirty blonde. You never know what it's going to be, whatever fits Willa's mood. And I always imagine Willa as like this kind of Hot Topic wearing teen who really enjoys stories. And her and Timbo meet for the first time in like the auditorium or the cafeteria, and she's reading a book of Poe, which, by the way, Edgar Allan Poe is a very specific and important character for this series because they talk about how he's the original horror lord. So it's very important to keep Edgar Allan Poe in mind as you read these because there are a lot of references to him, and it's really cool. So I really like that, and honestly, when you read about these kids, they're kind of like 80s movie tropes because you've got the hero kid, which is Tim, and usually they don't have as much personality, and Tim really doesn't have that much personality. You've got Willa, which usually it's relegated to just girl personality, but she has a lot more personality than that. She's good, she's kind-hearted, she's a little on the strange side, which is why she likes all the scary stuff, and even her friends who are girls don't really understand, like, oh, she's into all that scary, spooky stuff, and we aren't. We're into, like, painting our nails, and she does like that stuff. She does like girly stuff, but she enjoys this more, and I think that's why it's great that he builds up such a character. Then you have the character of Noah, who is the fat kid stereotype. Now, he doesn't talk about food and this and this and that and food. He's a big kid. But he loves like old horror comics. Like his dad used to have these old horror comics that he used to read, kind of like Creepy Tales, like the little 10-cent novellas, the Penny Dreadful, stuff like that. He had those, and he reads them, and his stepdad doesn't like them, and you get to know his story later. But let's talk about what happens here in the first little bit. It's all about them going to the Haunted Mansion. And what's really cool is you see all these different references. Not a whole bunch. He doesn't like cram them into you. Like they happen naturally. And that's what I like about this book. All the references to like rides, to Haunted Mansion, ghosts that are there, they all happen naturally. Not all of them were force-fed down your throat. Not like with the Hocus Pocus sequel. Get back to that later at another time. Let's see here. They talk about the Raven. And that's kind of cool because the Raven does kind of follow around, which is also another reference to Edgar Allan Poe, but it's more reference to something that they originally intended with the Haunted Mansion, and that was the fact that originally the ghost host was supposed to be a raven, and the raven kind of guided you through the Haunted Mansion, or it was going to be a black cat. But if you look throughout the attraction, there are ravens all throughout the attraction. There's one sitting over Madame Leota's crystal ball, watching her do the spell. There's another one as you're coming out of the attic scene with the ghost bride. As you're coming back and you're sitting back and you're rolling back in the doom buggy and you look up and there's a raven with red eyes staring at you. That's what that's a reference to. And the raven actually is guiding them to the Haunted Mansion because they've got this invitation from Amicus Arcane to tell their tales. So he's telling them about their tales, and he starts reading out. He gets to the first tale, which is about Lonergan's Glove, which is all about Tim. And the character of Tim, he is a young man who aspires to be a good baseball player, but he's not very good about it. And him and Willa are at a flea market, and he finds a glove. And this is kind of neat because they talk about, voodoo and stuff like that in it, because Lucky Lonergan, or Lefty Lonergan, I think it was his name. Was it Lucky or Lefty? Lucky Left Hand Lonergan, I think is what they called him. He was a baseball player, but he had a terrible attitude. He was one of the best outfielders of his time. Yeah. Lefty Lonergan. That's what his name was. Lefty Lonergan. And they talk about he was one of the best baseball players of the time, but he died. He died tragically. He killed himself because he had lost his hand. He lost his left hand. That was part of the curse because he wasn't paying his dues to the shaman. The shaman's not the witch doctor. Excuse me, the witch doctor that helped him with his luck and be as good at baseball as he was. So he finds this glove that belonged to Lefty Lonergan at the flea market. Buys it from the guy. Technically, he stole it, but he runs off with it. He starts wearing it, using it in practice, and he suddenly becomes good because he wasn't good. Now he suddenly becomes good, but his attitude starts changing. He starts taking on Lefty Lonergan's attitude with the glove. So it starts taking over him and possessing him. And the spirit of Lefty keeps coming back and haunting him. And he goes through this chance to change, but he doesn't. And he ends up getting ripped apart by the end of his tale. But then they come back to the Haunted Mansion after it's all said and done. And Tim's like, I bought this glove a while back and it won't come off. And they're like, oh crap, how come you didn't tell us? He's like, I don't think I remember telling you guys. And that's when you start kind of putting things like two together about what's going on here. But it was a particularly creepy tale, but the kids are like, whatever, it's dumb, it's stupid, it wasn't that great. Why was he a zombie? Why wasn't he all falling apart? Why did he want to do this? None of it made sense, and the librarian's like, things rarely ever do make sense. But it was a really good story. It was kind of creepy, and poor Tim. I felt so bad for Tim. I was like, he got ripped apart? I was like, okay, cool, whatever. And as you're sitting here reading these stories, you're like, is this what's going to happen? Is this has happened? You're not sure. So then they come back and they talk about the kids, and the kids are trying to find their way out. And then you get to the next story called Witchbug, which is Willa's tale. And it's about her getting a new bracelet from her mom. The bracelet becomes very important to the story. And it's got all of her pets that had passed away. And so she's mourning the loss of her pet guinea pig, Chubbs. Well, she makes a wish with her friends with a witch bone, which literally just kind of looks like a turkey neck. They break the neck, and she makes a wish that her pets would come back, that she could have her pets back. Well, of course, be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it. And while she's sitting there making the wish, her brother Billy is tormenting her and her friends out in the yard, and he's making it like Chubbs did come back from the grave, and there's a zombie guinea pig out there. I'm like, okay, that's really not that scary. Until you get to the end, when you realize that Chubbs really wasn't her pet, it was Billy's pet. And Billy felt bad because, you took my pet from me. You didn't even give me a chance to do better with my pet, because he wasn't really taking care of it like some smaller kids do. But the pet eventually died, and she felt the worst for it. But he missed the pet too, because it really was his pet. And so she made the wish for her pets to come back. Chubbs didn't come back, but her other three did. So these zombie pets come back, and they're very hungry, and they end up eating her. Or they end up like biting her to death, basically. And she's like, oh, it's kind of weird. And so she starts to not want to talk. And then they try and escape again, or they try and find out what's going on. And then you get to Noah's Tale. And Noah's Tale was actually kind of cool, because it's between him, his stepdad, and his stepdad's poodle. And his mom's away on vacation or a business trip or something of that nature. And it's the middle of summer, and he wants to go out and have fun, but the stepdad, who's kind of a jerk, and it's, like I said, it's cliche, but it works for the story, is trying to make Noah learn some responsibility and work off some of his flab by getting the pool ready for the summer. And he's always on top of Noah. He's very hard on Noah. He's too hard on Noah. And Noah ends up like looking at one of his dad's old comic books, and he says to himself, oh, well, what if I actually could order the sea monster that's in this like old clipping, this old coupon. So he sends away for it. He adds inflation, like the kid's real smart. He adds inflation, sends out for it, and then he gets it. It specifically says, do not use in salt water. Well, his stepdad wants him to fill out the tub, or not the tub, but the pool, not with like the chlorine. He says, you gotta use salt water. That's what everyone's doing nowadays, because it's more environmentally healthy and friendly. And Noah's like, okay, whatever. So he goes and he does it. And he's like, you know what? I wonder if these things actually do work. And if that's the case, I'm going to put some sea monsters in his pool. So he puts it in salt water, which it says do not do. Because he's thinking, oh, it's probably going to give him a rash, or it's going to turn his hair green. It's going to be a great prank. Well, it doesn't. Obviously, this Cthulhu-style monster, this monster of the deep from prehistoric era, comes up and starts like trying to kill him and the poodle, and Noah's like, oh my god, I gotta rescue him. So he goes in, and he does end up rescuing them, but he ends up getting killed by the monster in the end. And he gets like pulled down the drain with the monster. Could you imagine? Like, it pulls you into this drain, the drain only about that big. Your body can't fit through that. Oh my god, that would be a painful death. But that's what happens to him. And it's real sad. And I really kind of felt like maybe he should have been spared, but it wouldn't fit with the story. And then you get to the last one, Buried Alive. And this was the Rolly Crump reference that they made, because there's this kid named Roland. A little smirk on Rolly's pudgy little face. They thought he had a deal breaker. It was really cool. I really like it because in this one, Steve, who really is like the pretty boy, bad boy stereotype that you see in a lot of 80s kids films, he gets this reputation for being a guy who does dares. Like, he's the king of dares until Rolly runs into town. Hello, phone. He becomes the king of dares until, like, oh my god, stop. This always happens when I make a video. I'm gonna have to cut this out. So it's a really awesome Rolly Crump reference, and turn that off real quick. So it's a really awesome Rolly Crump reference, and Steve, who's gotten to be known as the King of Dares, has this kid named Rolly that rolls into town, and Rolly rolls. Not bad, I'm terrible. He gets into town, and he takes over as King of Dares, and it's like this kind of idea of being buried alive. And Steve's the only one who's been able to put things together. He goes, go ahead and tell my tale. Go ahead, I already know the tale. I know the tale. I am the tale. And it's he goes crazy, and he goes crazy at the end of his tale too, because he ends up getting buried alive because I'm not going to be a loser. I'm not a loser. I'm the king of scares. And I think it's actually our first reference to the caretaker of the Haunted Mansion. And the caretaker is actually a character in this, and you see him, like, he's part of the cemetery. The Eternal Grace Cemetery, I think is what it was called. Let's actually see here. Oh, it's also our first reference to the Grim Grinning Ghosts and to the hitchhiking ghosts. You see them because they always warn you, don't pick them up. Don't pick them up. Whatever you do, don't pick them up, because they'll follow you home. You don't want that. And it's really cool because it makes them more scary. When they don't talk about it, it's like, what do they do? Like, when they follow you home, what do they do? But they never talk about it, and that makes it even scarier, in my opinion. Let's see here. Let's see. Steve chased him on the verge of begging. Eternal Grace Cemetery. That's what it was. So, yeah. And then you find out towards the end of the book, after this is all over with, that the kids are all dead. And they have been since the beginning of the book. And that's a really good twist to this series. And that's what kind of follows up into the next other 3 books with these guys here. Because the kids always come back in some way, shape, or form. Especially in Volume 2, Midnight and Madame Leota's, which we're going to talk about next week. So, good things, bad things about Haunted Mansion, the Fearsome Foursome. So, the first bad thing, obviously, is something I think I talked about earlier, but I'm going to reiterate it. It is a juvenile book, therefore some of the words are juvenile. When Willa calls her little brother Billy a jerkoid, I'm like, I don't know anybody that calls her little brother a jerkoid. I'm pretty sure that's just a really good way to work around calling them a name without getting in trouble with the parents. So that's kind of bad. But really, that's the only bad thing. Like, some of the kids don't really talk like kids. They talk like an adult who's trying to remember what it was like to talk like a kid when they were a kid. So that's one of the only bad things about it. And but other than that, Mr. Esposito does a great job of covering that up with really good, dark storytelling. So, but the good things about this, the characters are, for the most part, very likable. And you can identify with them. You can remember what it was like to be a kid, to tell ghost stories, scary stories around the campfire. And you get your Haunted Mansion fix. Like, I'm sitting here and I'm reading this book, and when they first talk about the Haunted Mansion, let me see if I can find the passage real quick. Let's see. Tim may be line for Willa. If I could just... It all began at the lunch table. Here we go. Well, basically what I'm trying to do is trying to pull up a description of the Haunted Mansion itself. Because when they talk about it, they talk about how the Haunted Mansion doesn't look like one specific mansion. It looks different to everybody. And what that's a reference to is you, the viewer, you, the reader, who are, like, say, you live on the East Coast, so you really only get to go to Disney World. You've never been to Disneyland like me. I would love to go to Disneyland and ride the original Haunted Mansion. That would be a dream trip. And I'm really thinking about here in the next, like, 4 or 5 years when my kids are older, that I'm going to take a trip to California, and we're going to take them to actual Disneyland. We'll do Disneyland, we'll do Disney's California Adventure, and of course we'll do their version of Epcot, which is going to be amazing. And I would like to do their Rise of the Resistance that's over there, although I think it's technically the same in Disneyland as it is in Disney World. But that's the cool part about it, because he didn't narrow it down to one specific mansion. He says it is all mansions, and all mansions are the Haunted Mansion. It just looks different to whoever is there. And I think that's... You could look at it as a cop-out, but it's not a cop-out. It's a really interesting way to bring all the mansions together as one cohesive manner, which is really nice. I really wish there had been more references to the Phantom Manor in Euro Disney, but there really weren't. I mean, there were a few, but there weren't as much as there could have been. Which, by the way, if you're interested in listening to a tale that is about Phantom Manor and is an alternate telling of the Haunted Mansion movie that we got with Eddie Murphy, please go check out Channel Awesome's fanscription done by Walter Benasiak, who I know on Twitter and is a really great guy, and by Rob Walker, Doug's brother. They do a great job retelling it, doing new voices, creating a great story that's already based off what's already there and is already an intellectual property of the Haunted Mansion. The Haunted Manor's got a great story behind it anyways. Whereas Haunted Mansion doesn't really have that much of a story. It's just like a bunch of ghosts partying and you get to come join the party, which is what these books are about. A bunch of ghosts who are partying and then you get to come and join the party, which is the other great thing about it. So definitely go check out that fanscription if you get a chance, and I'll leave a link below. And of course, I'll leave something up there for you guys to click on as well, and at the end of the video. So that was kind of neat. One of the things that got on my nerves at first about the book, but eventually I got used to because it does make sense, is eventually you get these bold letters. And what it is, it's a break in the story of Amicus Arcane talking to you, the reader, as you're reading it. Or he talks to somebody in the story. Or he's commenting on something. He's kind of like a comment section. It's a little jarring at first because you're like, okay, I'm trying to read the story. Let me go through. But no, it makes sense because you don't always read a story. You have comments going on in your head and you think to yourself these thoughts. And I'm like, wait, these are thoughts that I would think if I'm reading a story. Wait, I thought those thoughts. Did I write that? And you kind of get this, tin hat ideas around it, about it, which is really cool. But as you're sitting there, it does get a little jarring, but you end up getting used to it. One of my favorites is right here. Is actually, I turned right to it. Crazy. Steady yourself, dear reader, for what is about to happen to young Timothy is the stuff of true nightmares. Perhaps even yours. And I do like that now. I didn't at first, but I do like that now. Because it is like, when you're sitting there telling a story, somebody comments, somebody says something, somebody has a thought in the middle of the story, like, oh, was it that or was it this? And of course there are a lot of ghost puns in here, and that's cute and that's good. And just all in all, I really like it. And I love the artwork too. Like, I love that artwork. The zombie pets. Look at that. It's a parrot, a bunny, and a goldfish. But my thing is like, really? A goldfish? How is a zombie goldfish swimming? Doesn't matter. It's a ghost, so whatever. It's cool. And there are a lot of references to some of the other characters in here. Like, there's a reference to the Hatbox Ghost in one of the other books. And just all in all, these are a great series. And this is the weakest of all 4 books, but it's still pretty good. And it's an important book. You have to read this book before you read the others. You can't just skip ahead. You go, oh, well, if it's one overarching story with a bunch of mini-stories in it, I'll just skip to a good one, then I'll skip to the second one. No, you can't. Because the second one, which we're going to talk about next week, follows the events of Billy, Willow's brother. And we're going to talk about that next week. So, what do you guys think? Are you interested in reading the books? Have you read the books? What did you think about them? Leave a comment below and let's get some discussions going. Also, if you want to, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm very active there. I do a lot of artwork. I may even do a little bit of artwork for this series. I'm not sure yet. I would like to, just to kind of do my own artistic interpretation of these books and see what you guys think, and let's talk about it some more. Anyways, I enjoyed having you guys here with me today. Stay spooky out there, everybody, and we'll see you on the next one.